sectors talking since the conference commenced. This is the 5th day of the conference, the most important day in the history of the Elimination of Child Labor Conference. In other words, this session is at the center of shaping the Durban call of action. It is happening, and it will inform the call of action, I trust. It is in this session that we will hear what must happen in order to eliminate child labor. We listened to all the sectors. Now it is the time to listen to the voices of the children, the ones who are directly affected. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, my task is very simple, is to introduce the Director General of the Department of Social Development, the one who is responsible for the children in the country, to come and welcome you. So without any further ado, I'll call Mr. Linton Mutunu, who is the Acting Director General in the Department of Social Development in the Republic of South Africa. And then I'll be able to hand over to Ms. Tshepiso Makwetla, who will come with her team of children to co-facilitate and moderate the panel. Mr. Mutunu, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Can I take my mask off? Dumelang, Sanbonani, good afternoon, hello. Hello, Sanbonani, how are you doing today? Are you all well? You sound tired, did they feed you? They did, wonderful, thank you very much. Program Director, the Minister of Labour and Employment, the Honorable Minister Thulas Nxesi, I'm told he'll be joining shortly. Good afternoon to everyone in the House and those who are joining virtually. My task is simple this afternoon, is to welcome you, to welcome the important guests and of course the participants, all participants today, especially the children from all over the globe. Can you give yourselves a hand, children? I think you look wonderful and I think you've participated very well throughout the sessions. Thank you very much. Can we also give those who are online a hand just to appreciate them as well and make them feel part of this morning session, of this afternoon session rather. So thank you very much. It is indeed a great honor for me on behalf of the Minister of Social Development, who is also the custodian of children, the Honorable Minister Lindiwe Zulu, to welcome you all to this very important session, those who are here in person and those who have joined us virtually. The 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor made an important decision, which is first, to not only have children participating in this conference, but to design a program that ensures that your participation as children will be meaningful through your active participation, your recommendations, your slogans, your inputs, your dialogues, and every level of participation that is part of this conference. I want to remind you all of what President Ramaphosa said when he opened this important conference, in responding, by the way, to Tato Mhlungu, who had spoken on behalf of all the children when we opened this conference during a few days ago. He says, and I quote, "The world has stopped to listen. Children have stated that they need to be heard." I'm going to repeat that. The world has stopped to listen. Children have stated that they need to be heard. And this session is therefore important in many ways, mainly that we will hear directly from children. We will stop and we will listen. The voice of children must be given due consideration and must be heard loud and clear, especially on issues that affect children both directly and indirectly. And I want to say to all conference participants, in fact, I want to also say to conference organizers, a very fundamental point. A legacy has been started here in South Africa around child participation. For the very first time, we have a very active session where children will be participating meaningfully and have their own dedicated session. It will be a miss, ladies and gentlemen, if this level of participation is not carried on through future summits. And I would recommend to summit organizers that this is a fundamental part, that we must continue this legacy of hearing the voices of children at every conference going forward into the future. As we all are aware, the principle of children's rights to participate in public decision-making and monitoring processes is well enshrined in the South African legal and policy frameworks. I trust that this is also true of many other countries who are gathered here. Other instruments giving effect to this principle include the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, particularly Article 12, and the African Charter on the Rights of the Child, the Rights and Welfare of the Child, Article 7, which South Africa has also ratified and continues to report on a regular basis. I've looked at the program and I'm extremely happy to note that the Children's Forum at this conference will include intergenerational dialogue, where delegates will discuss solutions rather to eliminate child labor. We further expect that in this session, children representing many countries from the globe will share their experiences on child labor and outline their proposals and recommendations for eliminating this phenomenon. Program Director, we cannot allow the progress against the elimination of child labor to stall. As a result, we need to explore all avenues that would assist us to address this challenge. We also need to ensure that all stakeholders are adequately involved in the elimination of child labor, starting with governments, by the way, who set the legal and regulatory frameworks, to civil society, academia, and think tanks, but also to business itself, to stop only focusing on profits at the expense of children. It's a fundamental point. We must also take a stand. We must all rather take a stand. This also calls for families, parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, and the community at large to become active advocates against child labor practices and to allow children to be children. We must allow children to be in school. We must allow children to be educated and allow children to be children. The time for work for them will come. The fundamental point, we've got to keep kids in school and children in school. They are the future of our various countries and the future leaders. And taking them away from school becomes a challenge. Lastly, Program Director, the two things I want to highlight, as I already indicated, the one, this conference will be judged on two things, or the impact and effectiveness of this conference. Firstly, as I indicated, the active, deliberate, and direct participation of children at every forum going forward. The second is the realization and implementation of the recommendations and outcomes of this conference, especially those made by children. The outcomes of this session must form part of the entire conference outcomes. This, ladies and gentlemen, will be a true expression of the fundamental principle of nothing about us without us. I want to wish you fruitful and robust and meaningful deliberations in this session, and I certainly look forward to the outcomes when we wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG Mkunu. I heard him saying this session must inform the call of action that is going to be developed in this session. As I descend the stage and allow the children to speak, Ms. Makwetla, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Sanbonani, you're in Durban. Sanbonani. I would have hoped you've learned at least how to say yebo. Dumelang, good afternoon. I was almost at Huenant, but I realized that I'm a little off in my timing. Tobela. I am Tsepiso Makwetla. I'll be a third part of your moderation team this afternoon. I'll introduce you to my co-moderators, Meli and Rebecca, in just a moment. But just a quick welcome and some housekeeping as well. Please remember to keep your phones on silent. And we're going to have a question and answer session later on. So just remember that is also going to go by very quickly. Keep your questions pointed and also point out whom you'd like the question asked to. Distinguished guests, I'm speaking here about the child and young people delegates today. Let's give them a warm round of applause. And you'll see some of them are dressed in their school uniform. It was agreed that this was dress code. For me, it was a bit of a difficult prospect. I'd had to go back to 1994 to find mine. So I decided to skip that bit. So I hope this is acceptable dress code as part of the Children and Young People's Delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, compatriots, as you know, this is the first time the global conference on the elimination of child labor is being held here in Africa. Unfortunately, we do have the dubious prospects of this is where child labor numbers are the highest and the least amount of progress has been made. But the important first is that this is the first time child participation is taking place at the conference, and child delegates, young people, will be able to make an input into the ILO's conference outcomes, we're hoping. But this important first also happens during Africa Month. I think that's also a very important thing, African solutions for African problems. The latest figures, as you know, say 160 million children, almost 1 in 10 worldwide, are still being affected. And we know that there's been a huge regression of efforts to fight the scourge because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And those within the age groups of 5 to 11 years have been most affected, especially as a rollback of progress in the areas of poverty, access to health and education. But most importantly, we'd like to highlight during this discussion and this interaction that the principle of children's rights to participate in public decision-making and monitoring processes are well enshrined in most countries, their legal and policy frameworks. These include the Constitution of South Africa, which is your host, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12, particularly Article 7 of the African Charter on the Right and Welfare of the Child, which is the hosting countries also illuminated rather in its planning of this. So the views expressed here by the child, I need to emphasize, must be given due consideration. We must also take into account the child's age, maturity, and stage of development. The child shall be provided with the opportunity to be heard in any judicial and administrative proceedings affecting him or her, either directly or through a representative or appropriate body, in a manner consistent with the procedural rules of national law. So I'm reading this out to you to help you understand that this is part of a holistic approach. As you know, there have been different panels discussing some of the approaches, but it is important to underscore some of these things, including that you'll hear about child labor from all facets. We know that there has been nuances that have led to either disagreement or contestation. We'll talk about that, and we'll hear from the child delegates why this is important, that they be understood from their perspective in that way. So what you're also about to hear are the lived experiences and the shared perspectives of the children. So young people from different regions are represented here, particularly Latin America, Asia, and of course Africa. There are 10 countries in total that are represented from around the globe. They are united, not only in their bid to end child labor and exploitation now, their priorities and asks will be reflected in their call to action, which you'll hear later on. So let me just draw your attention to this as we have these discussions, and if you are a speaker, to take these into account. But of course, a lot of these old hats, they know this, but for the audience, are the following principles on the intervention measures for children. We've got to be transparent and informative, voluntary, respectful, relevant in terms of the meaning and making sure that it's appropriate, child-friendly, inclusive, supported by friendly and well-informed trained adults, safe and sensitive to risk and accountable. And that I mention also because I'll introduce you to my co-moderators. You will know their first names, but out of respect and due respect for their safety, you'll only be introduced to their first names, as will the panelists only be introduced to you by their first names. So before I speak too much, because I don't qualify as a young person, let's allow rather for an expression of creativity, after which we'll invite the panelists to come onto the stage so we can have the intergenerational dialogue, and we'll also introduce to you the 7 thematic, in this particular case, because the child delegates were dealing with 6, the 6 thematic headlines under which the discussion will take place. So if I could just get the technical team to help me move the chairs back, and those who are involved in the creative expression to come forward. We'll take 5 minutes so that we can say hello, how are you to those who have joined us today, and then we'll get into it. Thank you very much. So that is how. That is how not to do it.
Pardon?
That is how not to do it.
Why
Let's take my ugly background. It's not Where are they?
Things are not working. What do we do? Pablo has to go to school, but we have no money. What am I going to do? I know. Honey, we have no money for food, and Pablo has to go to school.
My love, don't stress. Just chill, be positive, be motivated, and things will change. I'm sure you will understand.
I'm losing hope. I'm really losing hope. It's been long.
No, don't lose hope. Just be positive and have faith in God that things will change.
Pablo! Pablo! My boy, please have a seat. Your father and I do not have any money for you, and there is no food in the house for you to take at school today. Please, bear with us and go to school.
I can't go to school without eating.
I know, but you have to understand. Please.
Okay, it's fine.
Please. Let's go. Yes.
Bye.
Look at my bag. You have nothing. I have a backpack. You don't even have the one. Look at my haircut.
Today is another day. What do we do? Do you think Pablo is going to understand us again today?
Yeah, I think we should try and speak to him.
I'm doubting if he's going to understand. We've been delaying. I mean, days are going.
Yeah, I guess we just have to keep praying and God will answer our prayers.
Oh, really? Pablo! 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 Where were you?
I was playing outside.
Pablo, you need to be around. Sit down, please. My boy. It's the same situation today.
No.
My salary has not yet been credited in my account. Please understand, my boy. You need to go to school again with no food today.
But
Okay?
I always go to school with my empty stomach.
I know, I understand. I'll try to do some piece of work so that we can get some money by the end of today. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, is that a person? Hello? Are you still alive? Hello? What's wrong? What's wrong, dear? What's wrong? Are you okay?
No, I'm hungry.
Didn't your mother cook for you? Where do you live? Didn't your mother cook for you? Where are you? Where are you even coming from? Looking
From
this
school.
dirty. Huh? From school? Which school can admit this kind of a child? You are even very dirty. Like, do you need any help? Like, I am from the ILO. I can offer some help. Maybe you can need some sponsorship in education, some food. I can even build a house for you. You really need a lot of things. Like, do I have to do that for you?
Yes.
It's
please.
okay. Yeah, you can come. Okay, so that is what we offer as the civil societies, the government, as well as the ILO. We have to offer some sponsorship to the children. With that, what you mean when you say social protection? We as girls, we need free sanitary wear. We need transport for those children who have to travel for long distance to school. We also need free and quality education that is compulsory to every child. So this is what we mean when you say we need social protection. So it's a call out to all of you who are here. If you see any child who needs assistance, who needs to be helped, it's our duty. It's our duty as well to help. So raise a hand for kids, and we have to stop child labor. Thank you.
We are the world.
As you can see, this is what you mean. Now he's looking good with a backpack, with a proper school uniform, and he'll be admitted in a good school. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to our play.
A better day for you and me.
Mama Africa mahleku ske kwathini na. Dithi let us be united siphelise lento siqiqe siqonde imvelaphi zethu. Kutheni ngathi siphulukana namaphupha ethu. Remember not to let the devil win, because we are the winners who are willing to wait till the world changes. Given a chance to chase our dreams, to speak out is the most thing we appreciate. Remember, appreciation proves our power. I raise a word, I say, "Kgopolang dinako tsa ho feta." Raising words to you as well, Kenya. Kumbuka sikuzazama. Thank you.
We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones got the day. So let's keep giving. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones got a brighter day, so let's start giving. We are the world. For you and me.
I think they deserve a huge round of applause. Let's give them another congratulatory salute. It took a lot to put that together while discussing such depressing issues because they're affected. So ladies and gentlemen, let me then also step aside. I'll ask that our lip mics be turned on so that I introduce you to the other two-thirds of let's move in, so they can see you in all your brightness and glory. There you go. So this is Meli, my co-moderator from South Africa. Come on, such a handsome fellow. Rebecca from Namibia. She's the other moderator. And while we do this, I'm going to ask that the panelists please draw closer, and as they come up to the front, I'm going to ask my co-moderators here to take you through the 6 thematic areas that they've been working on. So they had problem statements and proposed solutions that they've come up with. But right now, we're just going to show you the parameters within which they were working. And before I do that, ladies and gentlemen, let me please quickly acknowledge and welcome South Africa's Minister of Employment and Labor, Mr. Thulas Nxesi, who's joined us today, along with his deputy, Ms. Boitumelo Moloi, also joining us for this session. Please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Okay, so if I could just call up our panelists to come up to the front, and while we do that, we'll then take you through the thematic areas. Mr. Thomas Wissing, Head of Advocacy and Partnership Unit, Technical Advisory Cluster. If you can please just give him a warm round of applause. And we're going to have from the Department of Employment and Labor a representative there as well. And Ms. Mikiko Tami, Chair of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, I believe is going to be joining us virtually. So, and you would like to introduce your colleagues?
Yes, ma'am.
Sanibonani.
How are you?
Sanibonani. Let's just do a small activity. Let's lean to the left. Lean to the right. Okay, thank you. My teacher always said, if you want to be a good speaker, you need to move the crowd. Thank you.
Good night.
So without further ado, we're going to be letting you know on some of the thematic areas that we have been working on this whole week. The first one, but before we do that, apologies, before we do that, we're just going to call up our panelists of children across the world who came to represent their regions and actually stand up for the children who do not have a voice. The first one is Amma Lal from India. Give her a warm round of applause, please. The second one is Ashley from Guatemala. The third one is Kabwe from Kenya. And last but not least, Marianne from South Africa.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to sit on the protocol that has been established by Mr. Pizzo. So during the past 2 days, we have been working on 6 key areas as children where we generally believe that this is where we need to amplify and enhance our voice. We have been looking at forced labor, slavery, child trafficking, and slavery. We have been looking at poor access to free quality education. We have been looking at child labor in emergency contexts, COVID-19, conflicts and climate change. We have been looking at poverty, lack of social protection, and lack of decent work for families and young people. And Meli will close off with the last 2 that we have been looking at.
Okay. So the final 2 that we have looked at, we looked at exploitation, violence, and discrimination experienced by children laborers. And the last one was denial of their rights and lack of children's participation in decision-making at all levels. Okay. So now that we have our panel seated here, hoping that they are ready to have a vibrant discussion on what we have worked on for so long, I think we will now take our seats and then we will start the discussion.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to my co-moderators. Just a quick word of welcome from our Deputy Minister of Employment and Labor, who just wants to welcome the children delegates, the young people, and talk about why this is a momentous occasion for South Africa. As we mentioned, this is the first of the 5 ILO conferences that have been established to work towards the elimination of child labor. Remember, only 3 years away, and this is hopefully the start of many more conferences to come. But we want to understand why South Africa has decided to be the first in hosting not only this conference in Africa, but for child participation. Deputy Minister, I believe you're just saying a quick hello to us and welcome, and then we're going to have Siyabonga Hadebe speak on the part of the department. So please give her a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. South African time is 15:41. Down with child labor, down. Down with child labor, down. Down with enforced labor, down. Yes, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Mine is just to welcome you to this session. I'm not going to be saying much because we've got Mr. Siyabonga Hadebe from South Africa who will be speaking on our behalf as a country. But safe to say that this is a very important session for young people in various countries, especially to ILO member states. So I must say that as South Africa, and not only as South Africa, but as Africa, as a continent. We are very excited that this conference, the Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor, the 5th Global Conference, has been brought to Africa as a continent, the first of its kind in Africa. And this is actually an achievement, and I think it also goes hand in hand with the recently appointed Director General of the ILO, Mr. Hungbo, who is fresh from the box, who will be starting in October 2022. We want to at least acknowledge and applaud the fact that for the 103 years of the existence of the ILO, is for the first time that this conference is held here, and in the past 25 years, but out of 103 years, is the first time that as Africa we are appointed to be the Director General of the ILO. But over and above that, just in a second, Madam Moderator, the fact of the matter is that this the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor, it's happening in the African soil. And it's not a coincidence that we are in Africa Month, because on the 25th of May we will be celebrating Africa Day. So it's a month-long program in Africa and in South Africa in particular, on the last day of May until the first Sunday of June. We will be also celebrating a child week in South Africa. I'm sure you are aware of the fact that in South Africa we do have that kind of a setup where we do not necessarily lobbying, but there is an awareness that we go around as a country to make sure that children are told and taught to be children. But let me take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you all in this session, and I'm sure the moderators will be able to tell you how you can participate in this session as yourselves, as the audience, that you have to actually send your questions through the screens that young people will be responding to. Thank you so much, Program Director, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your audience.
Well, let's have a quick recap of our panelists, and without taking too much time, I really want us to get to the nuts and bolts of why we are here. Unfortunately, the Children's Forum the time has been cut into because of the delay in the program, and we're trying to recap the time lost. So if you do have questions, please, we're going to ask some of our facilitators. We're going to have a roving mic, and you can ask the questions, but the panelists and the moderators have also spoken to their delegates, so the questions are also lined up. Just a quick reminder from the ILO, we have Mr. Thomas Wissing, and we have Mr. Khatebe from the Department of Employment and Labor, and Ms. Mikiko Otami, Chair of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, as you can see there online. Welcome, thank you so much for joining us. Let me just perhaps ask the first question to get the discussion going. You'll see and hear very little of me. I'm just a figment of your imagination, really. So they'll call upon me if they need me. Mr. Wissim, I think the most important question is, I think a lot of the child delegates, the youth, are really excited that this forum is taking place, that they are able to participate. But I think the question is, why only now? Why is this the first? Is your mic on? Switch it. There we go.
Well, thanks very much. And first of all, thank you for the great effort and all the imagination and energy that has gone into this Children's Forum, the first one ever in a global conference to eliminate child labor, indeed, here in Africa. And I think that's something to celebrate. It has already been discussed also in earlier global conferences on the elimination of child labor in Argentina, in Brazil, in the Netherlands, and in Norway. But it is not an easy thing to do, because it needs to be also respecting the rights of the child according to the 9 principles that are enshrined in the rules set up by the Committee of the Chair the Committee of the Rights of the Child. So it has been a challenge for previous governments. They have decided maybe not to do it, maybe they did not feel fully ready for it, but I think South Africa is showing that this is possible, and this is a possibility to get the voices of the children and youth into the room, listening to their concerns and taking your expectations forward together with the decision makers that are here for a full week to discuss how we can overcome the situation.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rusing. As Madiba said, it seems impossible until it's done, so here we are, we're doing it. The child delegates are saying they have a foot on the door, and this is, you know, towards a seat at the table, which is important. The journey of 1,000 miles, as they say, begins with the first step. But we just want to give you a sense, and my co-moderators here are going to introduce two of the panelists who are going to give you the tangible elements, effects of child labor. So we've got one who's still involved in child work and one who's a survivor. So I'll hand it over to both of you. Rebecca, are you going to start?
So we are going to hear from Ashley, who's from Guatemala, because she's still a working child, to tell us briefly what her story is. Ashley, and I just advise that we turn on our headsets so that we hear Ashley's story.
Muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ashley. I am from Guatemala, representing Latin America. And I am going to talk to you a little bit about my story and the story that working children go through. Most of working children, as such, it's very hard for us to express ourselves. And all working children have different necessities, and most of their parents cannot supply these, like nutrition, clothing, health, education, and the key causes of child labor are poverty. Poverty is the root cause of all this. It makes us, as working children, makes us get out of our houses, go risk our lives, and be able to help our family in different ways. It is important to recognize that children and youth, especially working children, are not done with their formal education. They haven't finished primary education, and this is because a lot of families don't have the financial resources. Then we have the necessity of us as children to go out to work to sustain economically ourselves. In other cases, children and youth that work are exploited by family members or third parties that abuse of them, violating their human rights, especially those that don't know they have them. In my experience, where I come from, in my country, also the whole Latin America, our case is that if we go deep into it, we see every day how working children are posted in parks, on the street, by the traffic lights, doing anything, any type of work. Not only working, but they do work in bad conditions. First of all, they risk their lives because they are not dignified in the work they're doing. They risk their lives, their health. They go through dangers on the traffic lights, on the street, or being raped by people they don't know. So from my point of view, I've worked in agriculture, I've been a tailor, I've been a small-scale vendor, and it is very sad to suffer because of something that doesn't go well. people tell you that you're not able to do things. And that's why I'm here representing Latin America to propose these advocacy programs for you decision makers to take action first to make sure that working children are dignified, taking into account that it's important to demand, but not only demand, but also abide by rights like health, right to participation, education, recreation, and other rights that a lot of children that work don't know. And that's why they go through this silencing, so that everything they go through is not talked about. Number two would be to eradicate child labor. When we talk about child labor and eradicating it, I know it's very hard, but the first thing we have to do is take into account the laws and child rights. Also, the establishment of scholarships for children to start, continue, or finish their formal education and succeed in all levels. We also want training, vocational training, for children to be dignified and included in working environments, for them to be able to work in the future. And lastly, for them to be able to discover all their creative and recreational activities, for them to be able to promote human rights and belonging to their communities. Thank you.
I think it's very important that we thank.
Creo que es muy importante que le demos las gracias a Ashley por compartir su historia. A veces es muy difícil compartir estas historias y lleva mucho coraje compartir la historia. Muchas gracias, Ashley. Hemos escuchado las soluciones que nuestros tomadores de decisiones pueden tener.
Survivor of child labor.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very touching story, and it is exactly why we are here at this conference. But moving to the other side of the world, we have Amalal, who is actually a survivor of this brutal act. So, Ama, if you can just take us through a little bit of your story and how you ended up surviving child labor.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Amar Lal, and I'm 25 years old, and I'm a lawyer. And I was born as an bonded labor with my family, my brothers and sister. I used to work in the stone quarry, breaking the stones every single day, putting those stones into the trucks. And those stones used to build the house of other people. That was my life earlier. I was very out of the world. I had no idea, even my family had no idea, like what's other world looking like, what is the education, what is the life of other people. We used to get hurt every single day, but we had no chance to go to hospital to get treatment. And I'm the one of the most lucky boy who got opportunity somehow. The Kailash Satyarthi, the Nobel laureate, he saw me, I'm working with my parents, and he rescued from over there. I got into the education. I went to school. I hold a pen. I wrote on a book. I saw a dream. Yeah. And I decided at the age of 8 that I got the opportunity to study, and now it's time to do for myself, for others. It's time to do my bit. And I decided that I would become a lawyer, and I would stand for other children who are like me. And today, I proudly can say that I'm a lawyer. Every single day, I'm fighting for those who are sexually exploiting by someone, who are the child labor, who are the bondage labor, and I'm standing and I'm raising their voice. I'm so lucky to stand here or got opportunity to speak on behalf of the Asia Pacific. We are organizing the 5th Global Conference, and we are saying on elimination of child labor. When we are sitting over here on this panel, there are more than 160 million children are still working somewhere. They are still exploiting by someone. We have made so many policies. We have made so many laws. We have so many regulations. But we children are looking what is the implementation of those policies. When those 160 million children will get their rights, what they deserve for. Maybe we can wait for the 6th Global Conference coming soon, but those children cannot wait. They need education now. They need their rights now, what they deserve it. We are seeing, in other hand, like Russia, Ukraine having a war, there are millions of the children, they are the victim of that war. They are losing their life every single day. There are many strong countries, powerful countries, they are the part of that war. They're spending huge amount of money to putting on that. But when we're talking about like we need to spend a money for the education, we need to spend a money for the health infrastructure, we need to build a school, we do not spend that much amount for that. Why is this discrimination with the children? Why is it happening even in this century, in the 21st century where we are living? Can you imagine being an educated person, being a labor officer, being a minister, being a prime minister, being a president? Are you allowed to send your child at the age of before 18 go to work? Why we are children allowed to go to work? We do not want to go to work. We need to go to schools. And I don't think this world is that much poor that they cannot send the children into school. So from this stage, I say, no more child labor, no ever child labor. And here we take a place, what we have written in just our behind, and child labor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amar. And because we're saying this is an intergenerational dialogue, and I just want to say to Kabwe, Mary Ann, you're going to get an opportunity to also make your opening statements. We also want to engage the audience. I know there are already questions that are coming through on Slido.com. But Ms. Mikiko, if you're still with us, and I would like to borrow from what Amar was saying. So we have the evidence there of the ILO has published the trends, but I just want to talk about the challenges of implementing and enforcing child rights. Some say it's just the lack of clarity sometimes when we look at things from a rights-based perspective, that we're saying, okay, children at this age limit or at this age can do A, B, and C. Is that part of the problem, the lack of consistency in our approaches when we say evidence-based approaches to policy? Are you still with us, Ms. Mikiko Tami?
Yes, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So I don't know if you heard the question, but I was just talking about the challenges just in terms of the enforcing and implementing of child's rights. As I said, the confusion sometimes in policy. when we say children have these rights at a certain age but overlook certain other, is the lack of clarity the problem?
Yes, thank you very much. But first of all, because I now have a floor, just let me say, congratulations. I'm so pleased to see this global conference is happening in South Africa on the African continent for the first time, with the historical moment of having the child participation in this conference. The Committee on the Rights of the Child is promoting child rights-based approach to the all work of the United Nations in all areas, and ILO, together with the government of South Africa, is now doing this child participation, which is the key of the child rights approach. So I really want to congratulate the host country, ILO, and children, child delegation who are participating in person and online. I heard the challenge about implementation. We have a lot of law, policy, and now I heard there's some inconsistency or lack of clarity, or I understand, yes, I agree. And so perhaps I would like to respond to the question. First, implementation of the policy, but to implement the policy effectively, we could have clarity, and we could have the clear understanding what we are fighting for and what we are fighting against, and all are for the holistic implementation of the children's rights. So I think we should have the clear understanding of the rights of the child, and we committee is very happy to engage more dialogue and more discussion with the policy makers and those who are working in this area. And I think, again, hearing the voice of the children is very important. We talk about evidence-based, and what children are experiencing and how the children are thinking of are part of the evidence. So I think I'd like to highlight again the importance of engaging the children to understand the reality, which is the part of the evidence. And also I fully agree about the need of clarity. So because of the time constraint, I will not go into the details, but I'm very appreciative for the invitation for the committee to participate in this global conference, which is, again, first time for the history of the global conference. So please let us continue the discussion more for all of us to have a clear understanding about the policy, what is needed, what works better. So thank you very much. I hope I somehow responded to your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tami. So I'm just going to hand over to Millie, and you're going to engage the Department of Health, and Rebecca, then you're going to engage the other two panelists. I would just like to appeal to everybody if we could just truncate our responses as best as possible, because thereafter we're going to take questions and answers from the floor. Millie?
Yeah, thank you. Now, Mr. Hadebe, I just want to bring it home a little bit. And we know that South Africa has been leading with child participation in platforms like these and opening the voice for children. We do have the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament, but there has been issues there with, especially when it comes to political leadership, where it feels like there's a sense of tokenism of such and whatnot. And I just want to know from you, sir, that with these policies and all of these issues coming into place and issues of actually fighting child labor and other things, what is the seriousness of the South African government? Is it actually serious about listening to children and actually engaging with children? Or is it just a sense of acts of tokenism? Yes, please. Yeah, it's on, sir.
Thank you very much. I am a labor market specialist. I will respond from the side of the labor market.
No, go for it. Go for it, sir.
My colleague Thomas earlier on told you about the reasons why we decided to get children involved here. So this is a process that started quite a while back, and we saw a need that if we are talking about elimination of child labor, we needed to elevate the labor market instruments, what makes the rights of people that are employed prominent. So we looked at issues such as social protection, we looked at the overall rights of people that are working. Then we said, how can we make sure that these are infused in the broader debate of child labor globally? That's how we frame this conference. And this is the struggle that we had, because we had to convince our colleagues in the broader community of the ILO, where you have business, labor, and governments, and remember that children are not a stakeholder in that. So as government of South Africa, we said, let us try and get the eventual beneficiaries of whatever that we are trying to discuss. That's what led to this conference. So in that sense, to get back to your question, is that the South African government is quite serious about this. Is also serious about making sure that the voice of children is heard. So in 2019 at the ILO, we had what we call a centenary declaration, which looks at the next 100 years and how we are going to frame the relationships that exist in the economy. So we think that the issue of child labor cannot be left as a side issue now. We think that it should be mainstreamed and be put where it's supposed to be. So we have managed to convince our colleagues to make sure that you are ahead, even though you don't work. We try to protect you. So as the South African government, that's what we've done. And I think we are appreciative, and we should be appreciative to everybody that contributed to this. And we also welcome the young leaders from across the world. You are our leaders, so we understand that whatever we do, you are the eventual people that are going to benefit from this. So the government of South Africa wouldn't have taken this step of hosting this conference without imagining the future that we would like to see, where we've got children with respected rights, children who are fed, children who go to school, and so on. So even internally, our policies try to reflect that. But of course, there are so many other priorities that we have. But to answer you, we are serious about this, otherwise you wouldn't be here.
Okay, thank you. So just to pass on to my co-moderator, Rebecca, who will now introduce the other two panelists.
Thank you, Melly. Yesterday, when we were doing the history really of how the conferences came about, it was that in 1996, there are about 250 million children in child labor, hence why the first conference was in 1997 in Norway. But this is the first conference that has child participation. I am going to ask Kabwe from Kenya to give us his opening statement, and thereafter I'm going to ask Mary Ann, who is from Proudly South African, also to give us her opening statement, because this is child participation.
Thank you very much. Just a correction, I'm from Zambia. Thank you. Greetings to everybody. I would love to greet you, but I'll just say all protocols observed. We're here for the elimination of child labor, as it says. So I'm representing the African continent at large, which means both the children that are virtual and those that are present in this hall. Due to me being a representative, I'm going to speak from both points of views that were raised during the discussion and consultations that took place. We're here for the elimination of child labor, as I earlier stated. Most of the children believe in Convention 182 of ILO. Convention 182 states the worst form of child labor, and most of the children want to eliminate, all of the children want to eliminate the worst form of child labor. Due to this, others have foreseen in their countries that the situation is not favorable, that everything could be eliminated and all solutions could be implemented in one go. Because of the 4 conferences that we have had, and this is the 5th, there has been less of a change. The number has remained constant, the estimate, or it has been rising here in Africa. So there is no viable solution that has been there in the past 4 conferences. So due to this, others prefer that Convention 138 should be utilized. Convention 138 states on the minimum age, the standards, and regulation of the kind of work that the child can do. Because in the definition of child labor, we have issues of talking about the mental well-being, the fundamental rights of a child, such as education and other things, that if they're violated, it's considered to be child labor. But the other argument from the other point of view states that those fundamental rights are not argued, are not violated. So which means they say it's not child labor for them, but they request that you, our governments, monitor and evaluate everything. The other point that they consolidated on is consultation. We believe that consultation is the best way to get children into any forum. In the past 4 forums that we have had, we have discovered that children have been less consulted compared to this one. So we're very excited that this is the first consultation. But at the same time, others are very skeptic that this consultation might erode to elements that will not favor children who are working, who have developed a sense of responsibility so that they can attend their education due to various reasons. The other group has strictly for the elimination of child labor. So I'm representing the 2 views that are coming from every African children in this country. So the other thing is that they want to be recognized nationally and globally as citizens, and to be actors, sector actors of implementing and sustaining the planet and all its inhabitants, because they are the future generation of tomorrow, and they are going to continue from where the adults are going to leave their legacy. They'll continue to burn the fire that the adults started, and they'll keep it going. Just to be in short, thank you.
Thank you, Kabwe.
Go for it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. We, as the children, have observed numerous issues pertaining to forced labor, slavery, and child trafficking. In our discussions, we have come up with recommendations of solutions, namely for stakeholders such as the ILO to create an accountability corner for the government to account as to what is the progress on the implementation of the policies and commitments they have adopted. For media to commit to a consistent broadcasting of children's issues, especially child trafficking, child slavery, and child labor. And finally, fast-tracking the implementation of the policies adopted, as well as monitoring of already existing legislations. We, as the children, request that more child rights governance systems be put in place, for there to be more platforms where children can actively participate in decision-making processes concerning them, and for organizations such as the ILO and UNICEF to have a children's division where they can work with us and not for us. As it was mentioned many times, nothing for the children without the children. Finally, we, as the children of South Africa, request to be moved from the Department of Social Development to the Presidency. Thank you.
Well, as you can hear, the children have spoken. Are there questions that are coming from the floor that would be directed either to the child delegates or to our panelists from the ILO, the Department of Labor, or of course Ms. Mikiko, who's joining us online on the Convention on Child Rights? Anybody? Hands up. We've got a roving mic there in the audience. I think there have been so many important issues raised. You've heard personal testimonies. I can't believe that none of you have a question to ask. If you don't, I'm going to hand it back to my co-moderators here, who have plenty to share. Okay, so we do have a question? Sure.
We just kindly request that if you do have a question, because we only have one mic, to just please come and stand here. Thanks.
And please remember to keep your question brief. Also indicate to whom you're posing the question. And introduce yourself, please.
Greetings, my name is Tatum Mhlungu. The question is directed to the ILO and also as well as the South African government. So I have mentioned before that I have had a friend of mine who was forced into child labor by their parents at a very young age. So the question is that if these are the circumstances, who has the power to report, and what are the after effects to the people that force their own children to work with them?
Are you able to share with us what kind of labor?
No.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
The next question, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much to the panelists. Much appreciated. My name is Gugu Aba. I'm from Save the Children, South Africa. Mine is a comment, and knowing that tomorrow the call to action will be on the table, we would like to remind that according to child rights programming, children are participants of all activities that relate to them, because nothing about them without them. So we are appealing to these brilliant people that are working on the call to action to take note of the inputs that children have made, and to remember that yes, there's a tripartite, but it's a tripartite plus civil society and the children that are sitting here, so that what comes out of those interventions is a full and good representation of the children that we are serving. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Sipondlovu from South Africa.
Please speak up.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sipondlovu from South Africa. This morning as I woke up watching the news, there was a clip from SABC in the Eastern Cape where children are exposed to child labor in a sense that they are digging sand and selling to those who do business with sand. And one of the mayors was interviewed, and I think I was disturbed by the comments that she made. And she said, I quote, "We would like to help these children, but it's difficult for us because they must survive." Now, if we hear public officials or public politicians people given the authority to change the lives of the people, and having such comments, and this goes to Siyabonga, and saying such comments, what kind of a society are we building? More so as South Africa holding and hosting this conference. What kind of examples are we setting, and are we really taking this particular matter serious? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead.
I am Venkat Reddy from India. My question is to ILO delegation, and I also echo with our advocate from India, a child laborer but advocate. Namaste. I think the investments in children, all nations are investing in their arms race, in their arms purchases, in their war mongering. How can we put pressure on the national governments to invest on their children? And investment is the key for elimination of child labor. Can we throw some light on that, on their GDPs, on their national incomes? Increase the investments is the right response, which I think, can you elaborate on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon all. I'm Alessio Marcus from South Africa. So my question to the ILO, including the South African government, is what is the strategy of developing the action plan, and will children be included in the drafting of the action plan? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Luthuli from Indie Content Africa. My question is directed to the ILO. I would like to know what are some of the key resolutions that have been taken in previous conferences, since we are at the 5th conference right now, and how has that impacted, what impact has it come about from those resolutions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Drew's going to have the final question.
Thank you. I'm SABC Msezane from South Africa, an activist against child labor. Back in 1998, when the Global March for the first time marched into the ILO conference, when Convention 182 was discussed. At the time when we marched against child labor, we said we're not marching for the words on paper, for documents that will lie somewhere and develop dust. This is the 5th conference on ending child labor. It's held in our soil in South Africa. My request, it's not a question, is that let's see the implementation. Children must not be robbed of their childhood. Children must be children. They need toys, they need books, they need education. And I want to talk to my little baby there from Zambia, that my baby, you don't have a responsibility to work. Your responsibility is to be a child. Your parents have a responsibility to work and take care of you. There is no child, irrespective of poverty or anything, that has to take responsibility of parents. Our parents this day and age in my country are not working. We have a problem of unemployment, and employers will prefer to employ children and exploit them. Therefore, baby boy, you need to be in class. You need to sit in that chair of the DG of ILO or president, not to go and work at your age. You cannot make any informed decisions to decide that you need to work because you come from a poor family. That's why we are talking of governments having to take care and make sure that they provide for the poor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask that we give at least a minute each to each of the respondents, and that'll be each of the panelists. Mr. Wissing, we'll start with you, then we'll follow by Mr. Hadebe and Ms. Otami. I'll also give you an opportunity to respond to some of what you might feel is of interest, and we will then come to the child delegates to respond. Let's first then start with Mr. Wissing.
Well, I will try to answer all these questions to the ILO in 1 minute.
No, just the ones that you really, because in the interest of time, to be honest.
Yeah, no, sure. I will be respectful of this. Well, I think the last person speaking from the floor already summarized a little bit what we need to go for. Of course, we understand that there's poverty out there. Of course, we understand COVID-19 hasn't made it easier. We understand many children are out of school. We understand that parents are desperately looking for a job that provides them with the income to feed the family. And we understand that in that situation, many children are forced to work, and they may even feel proud to work and help their families out of the situation. But that doesn't mean this is the way to go. That doesn't mean this needs to continue forever. And it doesn't mean the children and the young workers need to have the responsibility for providing the family income that parents should be able to generate through access to a decent job, good wages, workers' rights. And this is why it is important to work with the governments, with the employers, with the trade unions to make sure workers have their rights respected, they earn a decent income, they have social protection, and their children can have access to education. That's what we go for. And that's it, why the international conventions and the UN Convention, the international conventions of the ILO and the UN Convention on the rights of the child are so important, because they set standards, they establish rights, and these rights are not something that you can negotiate according to a local condition or a problem. These are aspirations that countries need to put into practice, and we try to help them. It doesn't work by decree, but if you don't have these conventions, if you don't look at them, if you don't implement them, then probably we will still discuss the same things that we're discussing here in 50 years. And that's not what we want. We really want to create alternatives for children to be free from child labor and to eliminate child labor.
Thank you, Mr. Wissing. I think, Mr. Khatib, the whole issue of if public officials, people who have the authority, are meant to intervene and help, if they're saying they're scared, if I got the question correctly, how are we supposed to resolve this issue? And I know this is just beyond a state problem, but if state officials are capacitated, if they say they're scared, how are we going to resolve this issue?
Well, the main issue here is that South Africa has ratified the conventions and the treaties that are there. And we've set a very extensive legal framework in the country where everybody should be enjoying some freedoms, and we have done so much as a government over the years. However, we understand that we are a country that emerges out of a difficult situation where, let's say, people in farms and so on have not had children or have not had rights. And we know that other people in the society are like invisible citizens, but there are efforts that are being made. Of course, this is competing with other problems that we have. We are a country that has got high unemployment, poverty, and so on. This is a very unfortunate situation that government is working on it, but it will take time. Of course, we need to address other areas such as the economy, skills, and so on, because we must remember that child labor is not an independent variable. It's linked to other problems that are in society. And then if ever child labor happens, as my colleague, is it Tato, was asking who's responsible for reporting, government can do so much. And if it's not aware of what is going on, it cannot act. We need to stand up as the community and report these incidences. For example, the one that was shown this morning on TV happening in the Eastern Cape. It caught our attention when we spoke with the Director General of the department. We are sending our labor inspectors down to the Eastern Cape to investigate the case of the children that are working in the sand. So there are things that are being done, but the magnitude of the problem is the one that is creating challenges. And you will also be aware that we also have a lot of migration coming into the country, and those people do not have rights because of the way the laws are structured globally, and other rogue elements amongst us take advantage of those people and put them into child labor. But governments are trying to work on this, and we hope that in the future we might find a solution.
Thank you. Mr. Tami, if I could just ask you to briefly comment on some of what has come out of the Q&A and perhaps also touch on that in terms of the legal frameworks, who is empowered to report such incidents, and is that enough to bring pressure to bear on governments?
Thank you very much. And I heard all the questions and comments from the floor with a lot of interest. Because as I said, this is the first opportunity for the committee to participate in this global conference. And as I mentioned earlier in my short interventions, I think we continue to have the dialogue among ourselves who are stakeholders, or the ILO, UNICEF, Committee on the Rights of the Child, trade union, employers, and the civil society, parents, and children themselves. Because as I wanted to highlight the holistic approach, the Convention on the Rights of the Child labor issue is conceptualized as the right of the child to be free from economic exploitation. And also we recognize the child participation. And also one of the very important rights of the child is, of course, right to education and right to development. And also one key element of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is the recognition of evolving capacity of the children, because Convention covers all children age group from 0 to before 18. So in this whole holistic framework, how can we integrate all those elements which were now raised in this conversation, including the right of the child? What is the right of the child in this context? So it's not an easy question, but I found that this should be the beginning of the whole discussion, including the children themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tan.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for those responses. And I just want to go to Amalal. As a law scholar and a survivor of child labor, there's a question that has been raised on the floor about putting pressure on the government and other bodies to actually accelerate these policies that they have taken. As a law student, what are some of the ways that we as normal people on the ground and children ourselves, that we can use and utilize the tools that we have to actually put pressure on government and other bodies?
So I think that when we find what is the solution of child labor, so I will say education. So that's why we say children should go to school, not to work. So if you are aware about your rights, you will only get aware when you get education. So I think education is the key to change. Education is key to awareness. Then you can put a pressure on the government, because suppose if you want to question to someone, you should have an idea what kind of questions are you going to raise. But if you are not aware about your rights, how can you ask those questions to such responsible people? Then the next points, what my colleagues from India, he raised the questions there, that how government can do work better, or maybe how they are going to utilize their money in a right way. So I think, and what I believe, that when you are as a responsible body, when you are the responsible person, when you are taking any actions, or maybe when you're making any decision for any child, or maybe for any person, you have to relate that person to them, or maybe from yourself. Suppose if your child get trafficked, if your child is working, if your child is missing, what will you do at that moment? What will be your action? Maybe if you are a minister, maybe you will up and down your country. If any child missing from your country, are you ready to take that action? So I think that compassion is very, very much to require. So if you think in that way, I think the solution will come and there will be no child labor in the world.
Thank you very much for that. Now, taking it to Ashley, who is still in child labor, I just want to find out from you, Ashley, going forward, leaving this conference, and understandably so that not everyone in this room can reach out to Guatemala, to all those children who are in child labor. What is the support or the things that you need as the children in child labor? What are some of the messages and the way that you feel will rehabilitate you and will actually help you to feel a part of society and not feel like slaves to a system? And I do again advise to put on your headphones.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. Regarding the question, how can we feel supported as working children? Well, as I was saying before, enabling participation, because there is a lot of discrimination and we don't want any more discrimination. First of all, we need support to raise awareness among parents. Education comes also from home. First of all, we have to help our parents to be aware so that through them, children can know about their rights. Not only that, but it's also important that working children can learn about their rights. For them, eliminating child labor is something hard that we're trying to fight against, but to reduce the amount. Not eliminate it just as such, but step by step go searching strategies involving us, not only us as children, but also parents, the whole population, inviting them to support us and join for us to be, to take the initiative. And so that in the end, decision makers can guarantee our rights. So we can also have scholarships, for example, so that other children that will come after us, they can start education in a proper manner, and they can discover and strengthen their skills in a creative manner, and they can see their rights promoted. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now I will pass on to my co-moderator, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. I think one of the things that we have picked up when we were getting questions from the floor from she said that children's place is to be in school and not working, not having the burden of providing for your family. Now, Kabwe, I want to ask you, what do you feel the government should do when they remove children from work? How can they properly rehabilitate children when they remove them from work so that children do not have to go back to work as their place is in school and not at jobs?
Thank you very much for that question. The government should take responsibility and fund sectors that deal with children with a lot of funds that would be sufficient enough to support all children. That is one of the solutions. The other thing is, as Ashley said, we are eradicating child labor. And that's why we're here. I had a question that was relating to the same that talked about children being in school. So when you started the march, when the march was done, we had the first conference. But since the 4 conferences, why is it that in some areas it is being reduced, in some areas it's not? So we're representing not just the great achievements that South Africa has had, but we're representing the entire continent as a whole. Why is our figures constant and not increasing? Which means there's a flaw in the system on how we should work on this. According to the way the views come out, children have requested that they want to be in school. They want to be big people in life. They have dreams, they have visions. They also envision, but due to their disability to acquire those, due to different situations that they're facing to follow their dreams, they tend to vent into working. And this working is not without education. They do it for their education. So they do it so that they can become lawyers like Amal there. They do it so that they can become ministers. They can become delegates. They can work for ILO. They do it so that they can be someone. So if you could work on those flaws in the system, then you'd find that child labor would be eradicated. But if we keep on saying no, children should not work and don't give them an alternative, in the end, we're not doing anything. We're not solving the solution. So we should give them a solution. We have identified the problem. Let's give them a solution that is sustaining. Let's not give them a solution that will last them for a while and then end up the other way around. We have seen, I think I was watching the news in the morning. We have seen, I saw people working, and there was a testimony he was giving that he has been working since he was 13. And after being working since he was 13, he's now employing elderly people so that they can provide for their children and not allow their children to work. So if he didn't go through that experience of working, he wouldn't have helped those. It's all about the experience that they went through. They go through that so that they become big people in life. They don't go through that so that they can go out there and say, no, I'm not educated. They do it for the education that they want. We have a lot of African children that want to be big people in life, but restrictions have failed. You find that they would do part-time work after school, and this work would be trading on the streets, trying to sell goods so that they can raise money for buying a t-shirt, going in agriculture, trying to do certain work. But what they request from ILO is that ILO should enforce their regulations. You guys made the convention. You made convention 138. You set the minimum age. The minimum age is 15, which means, in other words, you said at the end of formal education, that's where it should be allowed. But again, you came back and said different categories of work. I believe that different categories of work. There is hazardous work, and it comes down. Hazardous work is allowed for children who are above 18. For people who are above 18, they're considered to be adults, so they're given hazardous work. So then we come back to our continent. Our continent also came up with visions that are being implemented. We have the Vision 2030. That vision also is working towards that. So the first march was a start, but in between, we believe that there was someone who was sleeping in between here. Because I am someone who would sit with the government and tell them that they're working children, and they wouldn't want to listen to the word working. Why? Because they know that directly children are doing that just so that they can go to school. Providing education is the basis of everything. But we talk about quality education. We don't want an education that you tell me that, no, this is how you grow a plant on theory. Give me practical so that even if I leave that education and go at tertiary level, I'll still support myself. I don't go for tertiary level, I'll still support myself. I'll still wake up one day and say, that madam taught me that this is how you plant. In Zambia, we plant maize. So once someone is taught from childhood, this is how you plant maize, this is how you care for it, on a small scale, even if it just means one seed and that child watches the crop grow, that child will never lose that. Because we say charity begins at home. So we are imparting in a system of saying, no, be educated, the government will employ you. Then tomorrow the government comes and say, we cannot create employment at this point. But you're educating more and more children. Why are you telling them, tomorrow you'll be a teacher, tomorrow you'll be a lawyer, when you're not going to employ them? So if we're going to eradicate this, it has to work both ways. If the government says, be educated, tomorrow we employ as a lawyer, as long as he's done, employ him. Don't tell him that the private sector will employ you. Tell him that we ourselves are going to employ you. So these children, their voice is that you, as much as we have a participation this time, let's make practical things that will work for the children. Not give them a theory education that they won't use in life. They will only take that paper. Once they don't have a tertiary level, you would say, no, you are not qualified, you cannot be a doctor. But if you tell them, today, plant this plant, and then come back and harvest, that child will learn how to make money, and that money will forever last. That's why we find that for us, solving poverty issues is being invested in a quality education, not theory. Because if we always go for theory, we'll never have results. But if you go for practical, we'll have results. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kabo, for your contribution to that question. I think it stems back to our leaders to say that do educate us, give us quality education, but then again, when we become adults, so that children behind us do not start working. Feeding programs to ensure that children are at school. But how do we really ensure that the education that is being given at school is of quality? How do we monitor that education delivered is not just education delivered, but it's education of quality?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. One thing that I'd like to mention is that we do request that the National Treasury provide a budget allocation towards quality education so that there can be free quality education, which is compulsory, especially in developing countries such as Africa or the continent, which is Africa. So when it comes to education, we have to think of education like Kabwe has mentioned. We have to think of education in the way of an African child. In Africa, we plant. We have farms, we have crops and everything. So if at school we are learning about how we can utilize our resources properly, then we will get a better education and obviously be able to use the education which we have received to create jobs in future, as well as have the National Treasury invest in skills development so that we can learn entrepreneurship skills so that we can create jobs for our youth and for the country tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.
It just seems like we don't have enough time, and I'd really love to listen to my colleagues speak more and more and get questions from the floor. I can see that there are questions on the floor, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to decline taking them. I've got a clock here. It's just gone 0, 0, 0. I've been counting it, hoping that we take more questions, but I do apologize because I'd like you to hear from the child delegates. The young people have drawn up a call to action. I'd like them to say it loudly and proudly here on the stage. So before I call them up on the stage, including the Department of Social Development, the DG there, and you, Mr. Wissing, to hand out certificates to the child delegates. First of all, let's give our panelists here a rousing round of applause, especially our child delegates. I think they've done outstandingly well. Please take a bow. Honestly, I think you've enlightened a lot of us. Amal Lau from India, Ashley from Guatemala, we've got Kabwe, who's from Zambia, and Mary Ann, South Africa. And my co-hosts here, Rebecca from Namibia, Melly here from South Africa. Mr. Hadebe from the Department of Labor, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to ask you to leave us so that we can allow Mr. Wissing, please do stay with us. And let's give a very warm round of applause. It's such a pity you're not here, Ms. Mikiko Tami, Chair of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Children. Really, really appreciate your time and joining us and sharing your insights as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could just ask the rest of the panelists to please take a walk down back to the chairs, and then I would call on Mr. Wissing to stay behind, and calling on Mr. Linton Mkhunu, Director General, Department of Social Development, to please come up on the stage so that we can hand out the certificates to the child delegates. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's what we actually getting that.
We would like to thank all the delegates, children delegates that have been participating in this forum and preparing this forum and bringing their experience, their voices, their expectations to this room. That one by one we will call you by name and then reward you a little bit also with a certificate of attendance to this important conference, the first one that has made child participation in a global conference on the elimination of child labor possible. Congratulations to all of you. So, first one on the list is Esther Gomani. Esther, would you like to come up to the floor? Next one is Kawe Lupupa. Kawe, could you please come to us? A big applause, yes, good. Congratulations. You can stand up here behind. We can. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Please. Juliet Mengesha. Thank you, Juliet. Andrew Otieno. Roshna Mangoe. Roshna. Okay. Okay. Yes, yes, please. Here we can see them. Thank you. Rebecca Ngilalulwa. Rebecca. Yes, I know. Diwini Shimwe. Diwini Shume. And then next one, Michelle Njoki. And then we have Luki Agbawar. Luki. Or Lucky. Not sure how this is pronounced. Lucky. Hey, you're coming. We do have more. And then after Luki, we have Selimata Zietzorum Salifu. Selimata.
Thank you.
Selimata. Yeah. Then next one from Latin America, from Guatemala, Ashley Villagres, who's sitting next to me. La única participante de América Latina. Un aplauso.
The only participant from Latin America. Please, let's applaud our participant from Latin America.
Rashesh Jataf. Rashesh Jataf. There he's coming, okay. Then we have Tara Banjara. Okay. Then we have Tara Banjara, and then we have Amar Lal. Amar? Is Amar still around, or? Oh yeah, he's coming. Okay, good. And then after Amar, we have Baraku Murandi. Amar. Amar. Baraku Murandi. And then we're coming to South Africa. A big applause to all the participants from South Africa. And Inkosi, Sungu. And Inkosi. Coming. Then we have Mease Elias. Meas Elias, and afterwards Sihle Mbadu. Sihle Mbadu. Given Machika. Coming already. It's quick now, right? It's good. And then we have Pavayo Halahale. Pavayo. Owami Shavangu. Owami. Nice to meet you. Next one is Ashlyn Bessie. Ashlyn. And then we have Trolohelo Malepe. Thank you. Next one is Mfo Menyatso. Mfo. Alessio Marcus. Alessio Marcus. And then we have Masego Mokwena. Masego. Marianne Pretorius. Marianne. Then we have West Mtunzi. West is coming. Are we good? Marianne, you're West. So we have West. Tatu Mlungu. Tato was already here, I think. Yes. So she took the other one for someone else. So Tato. Then we have Sakile Mohowo. Sakile. Tandeka Mtoviwa. Tandeka. Tandeka's coming there. Hamza Muhammad. Hamza. Hamza is coming, yes. Spiwe Adonis. Spiwe. Coming there. Here you go. Is it two or? The next one we have Freddy Ramoniai. Freddy. Feladi Fase. Feladi. Feladi Fase. Ah. We have Lindo Kule in Lodwu. Lindo Kule. And last one but not the least, Richie Yano Pete. Richie. And I hope we have not forgotten anyone. If so, please tell the organizers and we will make sure that you still get your certificate. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for, I'm going to call up onto the stage Esther, Hamza, Lucky, and Roshna, so we can have the call to action that the child delegates, the young people, are going to read out. And this is an expression of the past 2 days of conversations on what they see as problems and solutions. Please come through.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. May I please have your attention? This is the Children's Call to Action, 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor. The 5th Global Conference, which spanned the period of 15th to 20 May, was a key moment for both state and non-state actors to come together and recount the progress made towards ending child labor. This was the first time the conference has ever been held on the African continent. And it comes at a critical moment where the world is seeing an increase in child labor rates, especially on the African continent. This is the first time that children were progressively engaged, both virtually and in person, to understand their perspectives and what policy proposals they are making to diverse stakeholders to end child labor. The conference hosted over 60 children and young people from different parts of the world, representing Africa, Latin America, and Asia. This statement captures the expectations of children and young people at the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor. As we, children and young people of the world, have convened in Durban from other parts of the world, we are saying no to child labor. And we are asking governments and all other actors to respect and consider our voices to eradicate child labor by 2025. We have captured in this statement our call for action from diverse stakeholders. We are of the hopes that once these proposals are considered by the varied number of stakeholders, then we can make the needed impact to end child labor. We hope that this conference does not become one of just words, but of actions in the aftermath of this conference. And this is what we are asking for.
Social protection, assistance, and the provision of safe spaces for children during emergencies. Governments should make the needed budgetary allocations to support and enrich children's development, especially in poorer and most marginalized communities. Key decisions and advanced initiatives should be formulated inclusive of children's voice to ensure that in emergencies, children's rights and well-being are not violated or relegated to the background. Consequently, states should adhere to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Sustainable Development Goal 8.7, and nationally adopted policies and laws on the protection of the child. Governments should consider a multi-stakeholder approach on protecting the rights of the child.
Point number 2, appointment and allocation of budget. Richer countries should commit to providing official document assistance for poorer countries, especially in cases of emergencies. For an example, providing safe spaces for shelters that can be used to empower the children and their parents or caregivers on matters pertaining to child labor. Governments should commit to initiatives that enhance the appropriation of finances in a way which maximizes the usage of finances to support the access to social protection, free quality public education, health care for all children, including provision of free sanitary towels for children to ensure full attendance in school, regardless of one's status or background. At the same time, stakeholders inclusive of children need to be empowered to demand accountability and transparency from governments at all times. Corruption and the misappropriation of funds will disallow the opportunities for free access to quality public education for all, and in turn, diminish the abilities of children to pursue their dreams and aspirations and quest to become meaningful members of society.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our last call to action, that is to ensure the democratic representation of children and young people in key decisions that affect them and most at all times, and in the implementation of decisions and policies. Children and young people's voices matter. They are able to articulate their issues better when they are properly engaged. Ensuring the active participation of children and young people in key decision-making places, which includes conferences and the formulation of national action plans to protect children from labor and harmful work. Children and young people need to be engaged in a manner which allows them to engage in a democratic manner. Organizations such as student unions, child-based groups, and CSOs have to engage all manner of children to understand their situation and prove up workable solutions which are intended to enhance their livelihood and secure their future. No more child labor, actions and not words. We thank you.
I think they need a heartier, warm round of applause than that. Thank you so much to the child delegates. Thanks to all of you for joining us this session. Let me say thank you to Rebecca. Thank you to Millie. This is how we come to the end of our session. We do apologize for rushing things along. Unfortunately, everybody's schedule was behind. We have to try and catch up, but really, really appreciate your being with us. And we hope that you have heard what the child delegates have to say. They can speak for themselves. They don't need to be given a voice. They already have a voice. They have the power. They have the influence, if only you allow them for the platforms to do so. Thank you very much. Please enjoy the rest of your day.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami.